All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead and do this. I don't know, people might think, what in the world is going on here? You know, exactly, that's the whole purpose.
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday.
I don't
So
know what that
what do
means, but
okay.
when people say that.
All right. Sir, would you like to have a beer?
I would.
Salute.
Salute. All right.
Oh, great idea. I haven't had a Stella in a couple years.
Oh, I was going to say since like lunch. Wow. Well, here, let me clean that off for you. All right, I'm having a Ziegenbach. You're having a Stella. What are you having, a Heineken?
Heineken.
All right. Well, let's get this started on the road.
All right.
John,
Great.
good to see you.
You too.
Thanks.
How's your
Thanks.
day?
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a let your hair down
Okay.
day.
All right.
Subject matter today will include this prop that I wish we could have this prop every time, but we're not. You know, self-discipline and all that.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin with a quick story about where has the playfulness gone in this world. You know? And the quick story takes place in where was it? Thailand. Well, I almost forgot. Get them all confused. Takes place in Thailand a few years ago. I went to a refuge.
Okay.
And
Kind of refuge.
it was a tiger refuge.
All right.
And so I went there. There's a few people around. Paid a little bit of money to go see the tigers. And so as I walked through with a guide, there was myself and one other person, and there's a guide, and there were some other people, but I was with this a female guide. And we saw some tigers up and about and chains around them or near a cage or in a cage. And then we came around a corner and out in this flat area with some rock behind us, there was a huge tiger lying down with a big collar and chain around his neck. So I looked down and was like, wow. And he had his paws and he had his head on his paws.
Eyes closed.
Eyes
No,
closed.
No.
So I was like, whoa, that's a big tiger, you know, paws that big. And you're just like, oh dear. You know, sometimes you imagine you're Tarzan or something. And even though he didn't fight tigers because it wouldn't be in Africa, still at the same time, you think, oh, I could take one of those boogers on. No, sir. Not at all. It's not going to work that way. So anyway, the girl says, well, come around behind and give him a pat, give him a pet. I went, okay. She goes, I'll take your picture. So I handed her my iPad. I went around and I bent down and I started to pet the tiger on the back. Didn't move. When suddenly, surprise of all surprises, I was surprised at the overwhelming emotion that came upon me. And a deep, I just suddenly felt this huge sadness at that very moment. Yeah, very much. So, shocked me. And I was like, I just like, oh, and I stood up and I was like, whew. I can't explain it. I can only say that I want to say it came from the tiger.
Okay.
I want to say that, but I couldn't prove that. I don't know why it came upon me so suddenly. Just one of those things that's a mystery.
So you're taking on some of the tiger's
Yeah.
sadness and little
Yeah,
energy.
and I've always, you know, like some of us are more attuned to that. It's a real individual thing of how you're attuned to different things. And so I was like, ooh. So I stood to the side and stood there for 2 or 3 minutes, and the other person walked around and patted the back of the tiger. And I just was like, I can't do this. So I said to the girl, you need to take me out of here. I'm done. I don't want to see any more tigers. I don't even feel like it. I just need to leave. I said, I just, and she was like looking at me like, you strange American guy. And so I was escorted out. Just couldn't do it. And I say that to say, where has the playfulness gone? You know, on the internet, we're always looking at pictures and
On the
animals
YouTubes
playing,
and all that, yeah.
YouTube and all the animals, and I do all the time. Great enjoyment. You see all the playfulness going on in all God's creation, and then I see the tiger, and I felt that it's like, ooh, there is a brokenness to this world, and I just bring that up just to sort of say, where has the playfulness gone? And I hope that at some time in the near or distant future, that will all be returned to us. That playfulness, that
So
playful
when you
spirit.
let me ask you a question. When you say playfulness, what do you mean by that? As we drink this beer.
Let me think about that. Ask me the question again, please.
What is your definition as an adult of playfulness?
Interacting in a way that brings about joy. I think ultimately this whole purpose of being is about ultimate joy, and about joy now, and about peace now, and joy now. And it's not peace like you think,
Kumbaya.
but the peace,
Inner peace, yeah.
the inner peace that comes from relationships. And
I think part of that relationship is relationship with yourself. You know?
it is very much so. You know, they're very much involved. Yes, it's outward and inward, and they benefit each other. You know, whether it's cross this way, inside here,
Yeah.
this way, whatever way you want to go. I guess you can look
All
at
the
it,
different
all the
planes.
different things. Now let's get to why we're going to do this. Let's
Okay.
do that because
Please.
I really feel like this could go on for a long time. I could really just like, but let's really get down to the brass tacks. Actually, the good news of what today's about. The second story involves the Kampot River in Cambodia. I got on a boat one afternoon to go on an afternoon evening cruise up the Kampot River for 2 or 3 hours and back down,
Okay.
including the beautiful sunset, which I hope is on the green screen in
Oh.
back of us.
That looks beautiful.
Yeah, that sunset picture on the Kampot River. Here's the thing. On the boat was the owner of the boat. It wasn't a big boat, you know. Was the owner and his wife and their 3 small children, you know, like ages 12, 10, and 8. The only other couple on the boat, it was me, owner, 3 kids, was a German man of about 50, 55 years old, and his Cambodian wife. I introduced myself. We said hello and visited for a minute in English because they spoke English to each other.
Okay.
That needs to be clarified about what happens. He spoke obviously German. She obviously spoke Khmer.
Yeah. Okay. Man.
And they communicated in English. So that was all going on. So we went up the river, very quiet, very beautiful, gorgeous. He did some fishing on the bank when we stopped at a place. I wandered around, just looked around. The train's coming through. Hear that train.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, we need some Johnny Cash.
Perfect timing.
We came back down the river, stopped, docked. It was dark by then. By the time we got back, it was fully dark. It was like 10 o'clock maybe. And we're getting off the boat. I walked down the little gangplank, so to speak, from the boat to the dry land or to the concrete area. There, the German man and his Cambodian wife are right behind me as we're getting off.
Okay.
So I'm first. They're walking right behind me. So I'm almost halfway down, almost getting there, and I hear behind me the German man in English say to his wife, he goes, okay, something like this. Okay, let's go home and have a beer with Jesus. Let's go home and have a beer with Jesus. So of course, my antennae are like, what? What? So I step off. They come right behind me. I wait for them, and I just smile. And I guess he thinks that I'm saying bye-bye. And he goes, oh, okay. And I said, excuse me. Excuse me. I can't even remember his name or her name. I said, excuse me. I just heard you say something when you were walking down behind me. I said, did you say to your wife, let's go home and have a beer with Jesus? And he went, yeah, yeah. And I went, okay. Jesus, are you talking about Jesus who's alive now? Jesus, resurrected Jesus? Jesus? I was doing the whole thing, and he went, yeah, yeah, yes, yeah, yeah. And he kind of had that smile. He kind of had that half smile with a look of a lot of life experience on his face. I don't
Okay.
know if you know what I'm talking about. Just that, yeah, yeah, like looking at me, checking me out. And I went, wow, whoa. I said, that is the coolest thing ever. Hey. So we kind of did this high five, and she's just smiling at me, and he just looks at me. And I said, that is so wonderful. Enjoy your beer. And he goes, yeah, yeah. Bye-bye. And he left. And I was like, wow. Let's have a beer with Jesus.
Why does that wow you so much?
Doesn't that, wow, does
It
that
wows me.
wow you?
It does.
Does that wow you?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, let's talk about why that wowed me. And
So
you.
Jesus
and
drank
you,
beer.
And anybody else should hear this would go, what in the world? You know, in my travels, I used to go to all these remote places and different places, and even at the house, there's 100 times that I had a beer or a nightcap, and I would have it there, and I'd be sitting back, and I just go, to you.
Mm.
And I'd smile, and I thought, and I've often said, you know, you're always welcome at my table. I said that out loud. You're always welcome at my table. And I'd lift a glass, have a sip. And I think about the world that I lived in and come from. You know, my background's is a very wonderful Christian experience,
Okay.
but very conservative.
Okay.
I come from what is called a Church of Christ background, loving family, good people at church where I reared, going to church all the time, and some really good things that
Sure,
come
sure.
out of that. Although at the same time, like most things these days, there was a real religious spirit involved. And so let's talk about that for a minute, and that be sort of the reason that
Your little context.
that I'm bringing this whole thing up. I went to what is called a Church of Christ seminary, only they're not called seminaries in the Church of Christ.
That's for the
That's-
Catholics.
Yeah, that's for a lot of
For every-
for a lot of other groups, but they're called schools of biblical studies, schools of preaching, stuff like that.
Okay.
All right. And while I was there, I went at a very young age, and being there, I went to the apartment complex that I lived in. I was in school in this seminary, Church of Christ Seminary. I was 19, or maybe I just turned 20, got special permission to go at such a young age. And I found out when I finally made it out of school, I did very well academically. It was a real growing experience, really hard experience, but really good. On one occasion, I went to my apartment get to know your neighbor day,
Okay.
and they had beer there.
Get to know your neighbor day.
And so, talking to people, somebody I remember handed me a plastic glass of beer, and so I had a plastic glass of beer, and I was walking around talking to people, all this. Next day, or maybe 2 days later, I'm called into the director of the seminary's office, and I was in big trouble for somebody had called them and said, one of your students is drinking
Oh,
beer
for having a beer.
for having a beer. And so when I had enrolled there, they said, there's going to be no drinking. I said, sure, no drinking. And so they called my parents. They debated whether to kick me out or not.
Wow, for one beer.
Yeah. And said, this brings reproach upon the school, upon what we're trying to do here. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. But we worked it out, and I had to publicly go up and apologize and ask for prayers from the church. So that whole thing really taught me something,
Okay.
and it's this. Well, can I tell another story first?
If you must.
Actually, let me read this first. This is a quote from Luke. Jesus says, "For John the Baptist came neither eating bread or drinking wine, and you say, he has a demon." He's talking to the religious leaders
Okay.
when he said that. So the religious leader says, the guy doesn't eat or drink, he has a demon. I came eating and drinking. Drinking meaning drinking alcohol, wine. The Son of Man, I came eating and drinking, and you say, Jesus, you're a glutton and a drunkard. You're a friend of tax collectors and of sinners. So what we have is Jesus, he comes, he parties, and I mean that in the best way.
My
He's
man.
out hanging out with the people that the religious people are saying, these are the people that you don't hang around with. They'll bring down your reputation. And that's exactly who Jesus is out going, hey, let's have a beer. Let's have a glass of wine. Let's have a couple glasses of wine. What was the first miracle? What was the first miracle?
Turning water into
wine. His mom said, turn some water into wine.
That was Mary's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, Mother Mary.
Think about it. The religious leaders, to try to get at Jesus, to bring down his reputation, is saying, you drink, and you're a religious prophet. You're a religious leader. You claim that you're the Messiah. People are saying you're the Messiah. We see you do miracles, you nasty man. These are the religious people, because they're into power plays. So they wanted to bring down his reputation. Says, you don't hang around with these people if you want to be accepted by the religious community,
The status quo. Huh?
by the status quo, we run things. We can make you or break you. And so the whole point of all this, to me, was Jesus says, at the end of that conversation, he goes, but wisdom is proved right by all her children. We'll see how this works out. We'll see what wisdom is in this. Now, we come to what I want to say and encourage people to understand about this. In today's world, there's a real religious spirit. We won't talk about we're not talking about politics. That's a different discussion. It's its own beast. But there is a spirit of religion that's just like that tiger, trapped in a world of, what do I want to say? Not moving, not growing, trapped in a world of
Complacency. And
complacency, of tiredness, and of, there's all kinds of words that are coming,
Sure,
but
sure. Yeah.
that's something that I'd like to bring up to the religious community. I read a lot of articles from religious folks and from I'm talking about good people. Good people. And I just like to say this thing. To those that say, I want to be like Jesus was. Religious folks, preachers, teachers, writers of books, elders, deacons, you regular folk out there. If you really want to be like Jesus, there's another aspect that you've ignored your whole life. And that is hanging out with the people that can bring you down. Religion says no. That's bad for you. Religion says that's going to bring your reputation down. But a mature person, one that knows themselves, one that is not living in fear of repercussions of doing the wrong thing or what people may say about you, you'll go to those neighborhood barbecues. You'll go out every once in a while to the pub, tell stories with your friends, play a game of darts. I don't know. Hang back, have a couple of cold ones. Talk about life. Talk about love. Talk about sports. Loving on each other. Embracing each other. Telling each other kind words. Saying, hey, you know, what's going on with you? How many, me growing up, and I read again, it's frustrating for me to read all these people that say, and everybody says, that guy's a man of God. That guy's and they do their seminars, you do your seminars, you write your books, you get ready for your next little sermon that you've done 2,652 times before, and you skip out on your neighbor because you're so busy doing God's work, you think. And you forget the heart. Now, you don't have to have a drink. At the same time, if you're afraid to, that's not being like Jesus. Jesus wasn't afraid to. Why are you? That's a question between you and Jesus. Why not? Why not risk your reputation for a change? Why not write that next, why do you have to write that next article for the publication that you've done 130 times before, 50 times before? And skip out on the neighborhood barbecue, or have a barbecue at your house or your neighbors. And if they think, well, were we supposed to bring beer with us? You say, well, of course you do. If you'd like to, that's great with me.
It's BYOB.
Oh, yeah. But, you know, the religious folks may say, we can't do that. So I guess you wouldn't invite Jesus, would you? Maybe he'd like to bring a six-pack. Does that bother you that I said that? If it does, it reveals a religious spirit. Take a good, hard look at yourself in that. That bothers you. You shouldn't. Shouldn't do that at all. Was that a little strong? Was that a little strong, John? Was I too strong in that?
A little.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Good. Amen to that. Good. I want...
Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, John, thank you for telling this story and that point of view. And
That point of view. Yeah. I'm not trying to preach at anybody. I hope you don't think it that way.
not at all.
I'm trying to challenge people, myself included, to grow and to think.
Just a little shift in perspective. No?
Yeah. And it's a healthy perspective. It's not like oh, that's your opinion, John. Well, once you read it for yourself, once you see what religious folks accuse Jesus to try to get him, it said, you shouldn't be hanging out with that kind of crowd, and you shouldn't be drinking and eating like you do. We're the religious authority. Stop it. And he says, no, not at all. He was that direct. So, you know, I was going to read one more thing, or should I just leave it there? I don't even know what the time is. Got time for one more thing, ladies and gentlemen out there?
Yeah, let's one more thing.
One more thing. Where is that? Let me read you this. Usually don't do this, but today's a special day. Let the hair down. Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for his family said about Jesus, "He is out of his mind." That includes Mary, his mom. Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone inside to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Hey, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and brothers?" Jesus asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother."
Amen to that.
Amen to that. Next time you're out and about or at home by yourself, don't be afraid to have a beer with Jesus. Love y'all. Love y'all a lot.
Cheers.
Cheers.